Welcome back to another innovation review. Today we're going to be checking out the Conductor 4.2 from OWOW Cycles. But before we get into the review, just want to ask you guys to like and subscribe to the channel. Helps us grow, helps us get more reviews. But without further ado, let's check out the review. First, let's talk about the looks. Right out of the gate, you're going to notice there's something special about the Conductor when it comes to electric trikes. Though there are some cool features that stand out, such as the front basket, integrated lights, and the rear differential, which we will get to later on in the review, the main thing that jumps out to you is the rear bench seat. And besides just looking cool and well made, the rear bench actually attaches with quick release bolts, and we'll get to that later, but as far as the looks go, it's something that jumps out. Oh, there's a bench seat back there. The color they have here is this very bright red, very eye-catching, very cool, also safe. If you're thinking about it from a safety perspective, hard to miss that color. The other thing to note as far as the looks is going to be that step-through design and the slightly longer frame. So meaning that the rider can get on and off the bike easily and any passengers can get on and off the bike easily as well. Both of those people have plenty of room. So from a looks perspective, it looks to be a complete, well-built e-trike, and let's dive into some of those specs. First, let's talk about the motor. If you were looking in the rear wheels for the motor, you wouldn't be able to find it back there because we've actually got a front hub motor that's going to be on this front wheel up here. This is a 750 watt Bafang motor. This is a typical motor that we see in a lot of these bikes, so plenty of them made, there's plenty of availability. Now this motor here gets about 85 Newton meters of torque, which is excellent because if you were riding around and you were a bigger guy and let's say you had somebody else on the back, you would need a little bit of that torque and some of that power in order to move that amount of people. And so going with this 750 watt motor here in the front, it gives us plenty of power to ride around and kind of do whatever we want to do on this bike. As far as acceleration and zippiness, there's a little bit less of that here. It is a larger bike. So for example, we recently reviewed the Volt Air from OWOW Cycles, and we'll have a link to that up in the top. And with that one, it's a smaller folding bike, very zippy, very fun. And this one is a little bit more utilitarian. Bigger bike, larger frame, and so it just makes sense that this would be a little bit less zippy than some of the smaller counterparts. Now riding it around, it was a little bit of a different sensation having all of the power in the front wheel. So instead of feeling like it's pushing you, it almost feels like it's pulling you. And so I guess, thinking about it, yeah, that makes sense. But this was actually my first experience with a front wheel drive. And so it's a different feel to it, slightly. Nothing too strange, nothing you can't get used to, but it's just something I noticed getting on the bike. I was like, oh, it kind of feels a little bit just slightly different. Next, let's talk about the battery. The battery we have here is a lockable and removable battery that's just here on the back side of the seat post tube. Now, since we do have a little bit more weight here and have the capacity to carry more weight with that rear bench, they've also gone ahead and given us a larger capacity battery. So this battery here is 48 volts, 19.2 amp hours, 921 watt hours. Now, this is something where you're probably looking to charge it up maybe 4 to 6 hours, somewhere in there. And once that battery is fully charged, you should be able to get anywhere between 35 to 45 miles, depending on terrain, if you've got an extra passenger, all of those things you would want to take into consideration. But if you're just out for a ride and it's fairly flat, you should be able to get close to that 45 miles. Even though this battery is lockable and removable, the only way to get it out is to take the seat fully out. Now, that's not a huge deal. Now, and also you've got this, bench seat that you can just pull the whole saddle assembly out, set it on the bench, take your battery out, do what you need to do. But at the end of the day, it would be nice not to have to take the saddle out every time I want to take the battery off this bike. So maybe that's something they can engineer in future versions. Next, let's talk about the brakes. The brakes we have here are Gemma hydraulic brakes with 180 millimeter discs on the front and the rear. As far as hand feel goes, the Gemma brake levers are pretty nice. Now this is my second time seeing these Gemma brakes out in the wild, getting to ride around on them. The Monday Motorbikes Gateway 2.0 also uses these, so I'm starting to see some of these companies lean towards this Gemma brake. The fact that we have hydraulics versus mechanical, also an upgrade, so they really tried to get us as complete of a bike as possible at this price point, which I think is all we as consumers can ask for. It's like, hey, I got this much money, How much bike can I get for that? And it really seems like OL Cycles was putting in the effort to get us those small upgrades wherever possible. Next, let's talk about the gears. Up here on the right-hand side, we have got a Shimano SIS index shifter. As you guys know, I'm a big fan of these. Super simple, super easy to operate, and that is attached to our Shimano Altus derailleur here underneath the rear rack. The Conductor has 7 speeds, so that's going to give us a couple of options when it comes to hill climbing or trying to get more speed. Gives us a little bit of flexibility to ride as efficiently as possible. And now for a strange gearing detail that we have not really covered, so I don't even have a chapter heading for that, but we're gonna talk about the rear differential here. To break it down into basic terms, the rear wheel differential is gonna allow both of those rear wheels, the left side and the right side, to operate semi-independently of each other. What that means is that one of the wheels can spin faster or slower, allowing us to get even tighter turns. I mean, to the fact that you can basically do like a 0-point turn, which is a very fun and interesting thing to do. And I know that because I just spent about 5 minutes doing that because it's a very fun thing. Not only is it fun, but it is also safer because these tires are able to operate independently of each other. It's going to allow us to take corners a little bit better. And when it comes to trikes, tipping is something we always look at to see if it's going to tip and sort of test that boundary. But with this rear differential, it's very hard to tip it. You really have to try very hard to get it on 2 wheels. Going back to my previous statement about OL Cycles trying to give us these little upgrades here, the rear differential is one of those things that I think really elevates the bike. Next, let's talk about the extras. There is quite a few extras, but let's start with the big and most obvious one, and that is going to be that rear bench seat. So the rear bench seat here has this really cool material. Seems like it's going to be very good as far as like weather resistance goes. We've got these seat belts here. All of those are bolted into the frame, and that frame itself is thick and it really feels heavy duty and well built. Underneath that, there is a basket, and actually there is a smaller basket that can go on the rear of the bench. But for this review, that was just stored underneath that basket, but you can pull that out. It slides onto the back of the bench seat and it gives you some more options for, storing some different things. The next extra we have are going to be the integrated lights. So we've got an integrated headlight up here in the front where headlights go, and then we've also got an integrated tail light in the back, you guessed it, where tail lights go. Now the nice thing about having those integrated into the battery is we don't have to carry on any extra small weird batteries. It's just gonna run off the juice from the main battery over here behind the seat tube. And the rear tail light is connected to the brakes so that if you pull on the brakes, it's gonna flash whether the lights are on or not. You can also turn on those lights, and once the lights are on, that rear tail light will stay on, acting as a running light. It also has turn signals both for the left side and the right side, and those work whether the lights are on or not. The next extra we have are going to be these fenders, all 3 of them. One of our fenders is up here in the front, and 2 other fenders are in the back over both of those rear wheels. Now these fenders are pretty standard run-of-the-mill metal fenders. Nothing spectacular about them, but they did what I needed them to do. The next extra I would look at is going to be that front basket. So the front basket is going to allow you to carry some different items, and with that, the rear basket, plus if you take that other smaller basket out on the outside, you could really load this thing down with quite a bit of material. The front basket also looks a bit different than most of the front baskets that I've seen. It's got this little bit of a taper as it comes out from the bike, which gives it a very cool aesthetic, but it was also wide enough to be pretty useful for carrying maybe like a bag of groceries or a backpack or something like that. The last thing I'll mention is going to be this rear foot platform right by the bench. Now you probably could have gotten away with not putting anything here and just had the people who were sitting on the bench rest their feet on the frame as it's coming back. But it is a nice little attention to detail that does make for a more finished look. Next, let's talk about the suspension. Up here in the front, we've got this Moza front fork. It's got lockout, pre-adjustment, and 80 millimeters of travel. Now this is not a bike that is necessarily built for off-road, so we shouldn't necessarily be riding this somewhere we're looking to absorb huge bumps. But with this front fork, it is going to smooth out the ride quite a bit. We don't necessarily need a longer travel up here in the front because we're really just looking for this to smooth out our ride a little bit. And we don't have any rear suspension, but we do have a suspension seat post. This is, again, one of those things that's just a small little upgrade, in my opinion, that just is going to change the ride quite a bit. Now, whether you're a fan of the suspension seat posts or not, that's really up to you. Sometimes I think that bikes would probably be better off going with a more standard seat post, but with this particular bike, it felt like it fit. and it made it a very comfortable ride. The other part of suspension that we talk about is going to be the tires. The tires in the rear are Chaoyang 20-inch by 4-inch fat tires, both of those a matching set. And up in the front, we've got a slightly larger Chaoyang tire. This one is 24 inches by 4 inches. Now, these tires do have a little bit of knob to them, nothing crazy. Like I mentioned, this is not something we're gonna be taking off-road, off jumps, so we don't really need those big knobbies. I think these tires work well and made sense on this bike. The last part of suspension we'll talk about is the butt suspension. We had mentioned the suspension seat post here earlier because, well, I wanted to talk about it earlier. Now we're gonna talk about the saddle itself. And the saddle here is this very wide, very comfort style saddle. This particular saddle fit me pretty well. It was wide, it was comfortable. I don't really have any complaints about it. Next, let's talk about who this bike might be for. Now, there are several use cases for a trike like this. Now, if you were in a populated area, this is a bike that would work pretty well as a pedicab. So if you were gonna be, scooting people around Austin or something like that, this is a bike that you could do that on. If you were a mom or a dad and you're looking to take your kids somewhere and they're old enough to be sort of out of that bike seat and they could be strapped into this back over here, then that is something I think that would make a lot of sense. You store some toys or some snacks in the basket, you got your kids over here, something for mom in the front, and then you're off to the park feeding ducks or whatever it is that other people do with their kids. Now, the next use case is sort of unique, and this is something I was talking with the founder of OL Cycles about. They're been getting a lot of calls for this particular bike from parents who have kids that are special needs, or even adults that are special needs. And they want to get out, they want to do things, but for some reason or another, everybody's case is different. They don't have the mobility to get out and go do that. But with this bike, they're able to, pop them on there, take them out for a bike ride. They are getting this bike so they can take those people who normally wouldn't have the chance to get outside, which is a cool thing that they've got this bike that you can put people on, get them out there, get the wind blowing in their face, get some vitamin D, all that good stuff. And of course, with a trike, you can look at this and go like, oh, okay, I could use it for this or I could use it for that. There's quite a few different ways that you could use this bike. They are a little bit more use case specific, whereas some of the bikes we test, it's like, oh, you could kind of use it for whatever. It's like this one sort of has its own niche of use cases, but there are quite a few of them. And I think that pretty much covers it for the nuts and bolts on the Conductor 4.2, so let's go ahead and send it outside for the ride test. All right, guys, we are out here for the ride test on the OL Cycles Conductor 4.2. It is not 42, it's 4.2, as in, there's two people or two small people and a regular sized person over here. But that is the name, that's where it comes from. So we have got this thing kitted out. We have got the front basket on here. We have got the seat in the back, and we've got integrated lights and all of this sort of stuff, and it is actually very cool. Now, one of the main things about this that makes it extremely unique in the trike business is they have a differentiator in the rear axle. And we'll go over that, or we probably have already gone over that in the in-depth review. You can see it right back here. And basically what that means is that one of these tires can be spinning or not spinning at all, and the other one can spin. And what that allows you to do is get basically a zero turn radius. So if this was a regular trike and I go to push this wheel forward, it would have to go forward, but this one, I don't know if you can tell, is staying in the same spot. So that just gives you an idea of what the differentiator is doing there. But this is the ride test. We're here for some ride stuff. So let's go ahead and hop on and see what she can do. Now, right out of the gate, we've got that suspension seat post. So if you guys aren't used to riding with those, they're nice. It's a different feeling, just something to get used to, but it is, it is fairly nice. So let's go ahead and let's play with this as if it were not an electric bike. So I'm gonna shift down here. All right, so let's go ahead and stay in the flat parking lot for now. And we're starting out in first gear. So let's go ahead and go into second and third. Nice easy shifts going on back there. Fourth, fifth, sixth. Now, if I was gonna have to pedal this around, I probably would keep it. You know what? This isn't bad either. So with those differentiator back there, you are able to make some very, very tight turns. Heck, let's go to seventh gear. There you go. So is this super duper easy to pedal as a non-electric bike? Not necessarily, but is it definitely doable. Decent ratios here, but this is an electric bike, so let's go ahead and we'll shift down a little bit over here. And let's turn around and see what we can do here. All right, so we are in pedal assist level 1. Go ahead and use that throttle. Now just telling us how much power we're pulling, which is nice. It's crazy. You think that the tire's gonna come off the ground, it just doesn't. All right, got a little hill here. Let's take this. I am not pedaling, we're just doing the throttle at this point. Just cruising up this hill. Very nice, very easy. Now we do have that air fork up in the front, which is doing some excellent work for us here on those speed bumps. And all in all, first impression is this is a very comfortable bike that we can make some crazy turns on. Let's go ahead and pop down here in this parking lot, and let's go ahead and test out the pedal assist. Really, at some point, I'm gonna have to see if I actually can get it to tip. Okay, so if I play around with it, I can get it to tip, but not very easily for sure. All right, down the parking lot, just how Dad taught me to drive. Just kidding, I grew up in the country, we're driving in cornfields. Okay, we got in pedal assist level 1, and we are in 4th gear. It seems like a decent spot to start. Let's go ahead and kick it off. So you get about 3/4 of rotation there, and then the power's gonna start to kick in. Pedal assist level 1's taking us to that 9-10 miles per hour. Let's go ahead and make our turn here. And put it in pedal assist level 2. You feel the motor right away just go up from between the difference between 1 and 2, because 2's taking us to 13, 14. Let's go ahead and hit 3. Oh, there you go. Look like I'm sitting on a powder keg now. That's taking us up to about that 20 miles per hour. All right, so we got it in pedal assist level 3. Let's go ahead and go to pedal assist level 4. Nice little speed boost here. Do a little brake test. Nice. Brakes are doing business. Those Gemma brakes, starting to see them on stuff around here. I don't mind them. If you guys have any experience with those and you've had a bad experience, please let me know. I'm always interested to learn new things. We've got a very small perspective on the old Gemma brakes, but so far, digging them. Easily hitting those top speeds of 20 miles per hour, as advertised. Beautiful. All right, a couple of things to test. Let's go ahead and do a proper brake test. Which will get right about there. See how fast we start going. And let's go ahead and stop her down. Yeah, these things are doing excellent. Now, it wouldn't be a ride test on this sort of bike if we didn't test out the other ride that's going on here. That's back here. So we should, yeah, just maybe sit for a second. This is an excellent seat. All right, that ride test over. Well, guys, we are here with Oh Wow Cycles. So we don't have this bike for 2-3 weeks to really put it through all the paces that we normally do. This exact bike is actually going off to the customer. So whoever's bike this is, if you're watching this review, thank you for letting me ride your bike. It was a blast. And that is going to conclude our review on the Conductor 4.2. If you guys want to know anything more about it, please check out OL Cycle's website. I'll have a link to that down below. And if you guys have any questions for me, whether about my experience with OL Cycles or this bike in particular, please let me know down in the comments. I love talking to you guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.